Ngā mihi nui. Why God is the heart's cry in difficult times and is the rather timely focus of our pilgrimage series. You've probably noticed there's not a lot of instantaneous miracles and stories of deliverance in this series, and that's kind of the point. The wheels came off. Why God? They weren't miraculously replaced. Why God? And this week, what's worse, the wheels have come off in the desert. Why God? And it turns out a desert with the Delta variant in it, which is pretty sobering for us, isn't it? So a sober welcome back to Bubble Life and online church, where we will kōrero and karakia and have kai as a scattered community, but together in spirit. What makes the desert beautiful is that somewhere it hides a well. This little insight from the classic parable, The Little Prince, is a spiritual truth. In our scriptures, God promises in the most arid and awful places a river, rivers in the desert, secret wells in the valley of tears. We see the experiences of Hagar, of Jacob, of Moses, of the Israelites, of Elijah, provided with water, and with it, a new perspective on themselves and of God. In their deserts, yes, they thirsted, they suffered, and they raged and wept and fought with the evil one, with themselves, with each other, and importantly, with God. For each of them, the desert became beautiful because they found the well God hid for them. The springs, wells, and water miracles revealed a bigger beauty, that God heard them, saw them, provided for them, shaped them, and blessed them with identity in this strange landscape of the desert. The biggest questions of the spiritual life, of life at all, are, who am I? And who is God? And the desert amplifies those two questions. We need to know who we are so we can live truly, and we need to know who God is because we are the imago Dei. We are the image of God. So a shaky or rotten image of God results in a shaky or rotten self-image. And the desert experience amplifies these like nothing else. There are so many rich desert stories in the Bible, and in each we see something of a pattern of naming of self and naming of God, of clarifying who we are and who we are not, of clarifying who God is and who God is not. The first person to name God is a woman, Hagar, dying of thirst in the wilderness with her young son, and she's directed by an angel to a spring. And here she names God El Roy. You are the God who sees me. And she names the place. This is the place I saw the God who sees me. And God promises her a people of her own. Following this theme, let's home in on another story. Jacob, Hagar's step-great-grandson, has his own wilderness God encounter. And we can read about it in Genesis, but I'll share it with you here. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." So Jacob called the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. This mysterious event captures our imagination, and it's supposed to. We have ringside seats as Jacob, in one night, and the story in a few lines, covers the terrain of rebirth, naming, intimacy, wounding, blessing, struggle, and wonder. You want meaning for the desert? This is it. The man Jacob wrestles with is understood to be God. And as they wrestle and gasp out these few lines, we bear witness to the birth of God's people. In this physical and intimate struggle, Jacob was renamed by God as Israel, God wrestler. This name encounters the people, not just Jacob the individual. You and I are God wrestlers, or we can be if we're up for it. I like John Sanford's comments. He says, a lesser man than Jacob might have died of fright, or pleaded for mercy, or tried to flee. But Jacob hung on, and all night long, the two of them struggled together. He goes on, I will not let you go until you bless me. So Jacob refused to part with his experience until he knew its meaning. And this marked him as a man of spiritual greatness. Everyone, he says, who wrestles with their spiritual and psychological experience, no matter how dark and frightening it is, refuses to let go until its meaning is discovered, is having something of a Jacob experience. Such a person can come through this dark struggle to the other side, reborn, but one who retreats or runs from the encounter with spiritual reality cannot be transformed. So God wrestling is a dark night experience. And we haven't been to this nameless place before, and friends and family can't really help us. We have to do it ourselves. Jacob's family were just across the river, but it might as well have been another planet. So the struggle is solitary, but it is graced. We can ask for a blessing. If, like Jacob, we get a new perspective on ourselves and our strengths and what it's all about, that surely is a blessing. So at dawn, with a wrecked hip and a new name, Israel, who was Jacob, now names the place. He calls it facing God, Peniel, facing God. Naming our experience is hugely helpful and important. Humans are gifted by God to name things and places. So why not name yours? Remember, there is no place God cannot be. There's no place God isn't with you. Even the lonely place is where we can find God. After his baptism, the Holy Spirit sent Jesus out into the eremos, or lonely place, for 40 days. After that, Jesus consciously chose these lonely places for prayer and to be with his Abba, with the Father. You'd think the opposite would be true. I'd be, no way I'm going back there after what happened last time. The hunger, the thirst, the wild animals, the devil, temptation for 6 weeks. I'm staying here. Thank you very much. But strangely, Jesus now desired those empty, lonely places. And actually, some of us have discovered the same thing, that physical landscapes can connect us with God. We can have both a psychology and theology of place. God speaks in the desert, but maybe not in the way we expect. God speaks tenderly and in a still, small voice. God is seen or revealed in a special way to people in their desert. And the desert strips away all our pretenses. It brings us down to raw need. But also, the desert can hide us and be a place of refuge. We may be in the desert because Jesus desires our company. Come away with me, Jesus says, to a lonely place and rest. In the desert, our prayer may be plaintive, cries and questions. It may be wordless because, like the desert, our words have dried up. We can pray or sing the sad songs of God's people. Did you know that 66 of the 150 Psalms are lament? They are complaints and cries. And we can write our own. Tim showed us how last week. However you pray in the desert, do it your way. And keep looking for the well hidden in your desert. I'm going to finish with this from Barbara Brown Taylor. You will think of ways to have gotten lost through no choice of your own. It can happen anywhere, in all kinds of ways. You can get lost on your way home. You can get lost looking for love. You can get lost between jobs. You can get lost looking for God. However it happens, take heart. Others before you have found a way in the wilderness where there are as many angels as there are wild beasts and plenty of other lost people too. All it takes is one of them to find you. All it takes is you to find one of them. However it happens, you could do worse than to kneel down and ask a blessing, remembering how many knees have kissed this altar before you. I like that. In the desert, you could do worse than ask for a blessing. The blessing may be a new sense of who you really are and a growing sense that the God you thought you knew is much, much more. So, to get the kōrero started, there are 3 questions on the slide to talk about and reflect on, whether you're on your own or in a group. These should get you going. And if you want to go deeper, I've put together a devotion/discussion resource on the website to help you and God find each other in the desert. Jump onto the website and the PDF will be there. So, kia kaha, stay safe, stay well. Ngā mihi nui.